Have you ever wondered how different the battles from Hollywood's Stone Age movies are from the harsh reality? Forget about beautiful productions where brawny heroes in animal skins fight valiantly one-on-one. Real prehistoric confrontations were far more primitive, violent, and possibly much rarer than we are used to thinking. We will dive into the darkest and most obscure aspects of the lives of our distant ancestors, their encounters with their own kind. We will reveal shocking facts that are not shown in the films and learn how archaeological finds and modern research have changed our understanding of prehistoric warfare. Get ready to learn the truth that will make you take a fresh look at the history of mankind. Life in the Paleolithic was a continuous struggle for survival, but not only with nature and predators. Conflicts between groups of people, while not a daily occurrence, could be incredibly deadly. Modern science, based on archaeological finds and anthropological research, provides us with more and more data about how our ancestors lived and how they interacted with each other, including in violent clashes. We learn that even in the early days when humanity was just being formed, aggression and competition played a role. From skirmishes over resources to intertribal raids, every aspect of their existence was driven by a single goal: to survive and protect their group. It would seem that what kind of battles could we talk about when the main threats were mammoths and cave lions? You won't believe how sophisticated and merciless the methods of warfare could be for people who were just mastering the first tools of labor. Do you want to know what really happened in these battles? Watch the video to the end. For a long time, there was a theory in the scientific community that prehistoric man was basically a peaceful being, and organized war appeared only with the development of agriculture and a sedentary lifestyle. However, recent archaeological discoveries and anthropological research challenge this idyllic picture. Remains found in various parts of the world indicate that violence was part of the human experience long before the advent of civilization. For example, in Sudan, at the Jebel Sahaba site, the remains of about 60 people aged approximately 13,000 years were found, many of whom have signs of violent death. Stone arrowheads stuck in their bones, traces of chopped wounds. This is one of the oldest known cemeteries where most of the burials show evidence of intergroup violence. Another example is found in Natariak Cave, Kenya, where the skeletons of 27 people aged about 10,000 years, including women and children, were found apparently killed in a brutal raid. Some of them had broken bones and fractured skulls. This evidence, published in reputable journals such as Nature, confirms that violence was not an exception, but rather part of the Paleolithic landscape. The discovery of tools such as microliths, used as arrowheads or javelins in the bones of victims, provides direct evidence of their use in interhuman conflicts. These findings indicate that organized violence was not unusual among hunter-gatherers. Moreover, as anthropologist Richard Wrangham points out in his book The Demonic Male, human aggression is deeply rooted in evolutionary history. In competition for resources, territories, or even females can lead to deadly confrontations. This is also confirmed by studies of modern primitive societies, which show that the rate of violent mortality among them can be significantly higher than in developed societies. Why did scientists not want to believe in the aggressive past of humanity for so long, and what did they hide from us? If prehistoric people were so peaceful, why do archaeologists find mass graves with signs of violence? What you learn about the first war crimes will make you shudder. Keep watching. Imagine a battlefield where there are no tanks, planes, or even swords. What did prehistoric people use in their battles? Their arsenal was limited, but no less lethal. The first tools created for hunting and butchering meat were easily transformed into weapons capable of inflicting terrible injuries. The most common were stone choppers, sharp flints of flint and obsidian that could be used as knives or axes. Their sharpness, achieved with the help of the obivkai technique, made it possible to inflict deep cut and stab wounds. Acheulean choppers, which became the hallmark of Homo erectus, were universal tools that could both carve the carcass of a mammoth and break through the skull of an enemy. During the Upper Paleolithic period, circa 40,000 tolerance, 10,000 was more sophisticated weapons appeared. Spears with stone tips, javelins, and then bows and arrows. The use of throwing weapons, as noted by archaeologists, radically changed the tactics of combat, allowing you to deal damage from a safe distance. This was a revolutionary step in the military strategy of the ancient people. Arrowheads and spearheads found in archaeological sites around the world, for example in caves in the south of France or in the Levant, where the oldest evidence of the use of throwing weapons has been found, often show traces of blows and fractures, which indicates their use not only in hunting, but also in battles. Some of these arrowheads, such as the ancient wooden spears found in the town of Schöningen in Germany, about 300,000 years old, confirm that throwing weapons were in the arsenal of man for a very long time. In addition to throwing weapons, clubs, simple but deadly pieces of wood, and slings for throwing stones were used in close combat. The effectiveness of the sling, which allows you to throw stones with great speed and accuracy, is underestimated. It could disable the enemy from a distance, which was critical before the bow appeared. Also, in close combat, sharpened bones or animal horns could be used, which were used as daggers. It is important to note that many of these weapons were not specialized military weapons in our modern understanding, but were universal tools that could be used against humans if necessary. Such adaptability was the key to survival. They used rocks, twigs, bones, anything that could be found at hand, turning them into deadly weapons. Do not forget about natural obstacles that could also be used as weapons. Cliffs, swamps, or falling stones, specially provoked. Although these weapons may seem primitive, they were incredibly effective in skilled hands, especially in the face of a surprise attack or close combat. Their ease of manufacture and accessibility made them a universal tool for both foraging and defending or attacking. Compare this to modern warfare. Why, despite technological advances, are primitive methods of warfare still relevant today? Autvet will surprise you, so don't switch. Do you think prehistoric battles were a chaotic dump? Not at all. Although they didn't have military academies, our ancestors had an instinctive understanding of tactics and strategy based on their hunting and survival experiences. Ambushes were one of the main tactics. A small group of warriors could wait for the enemy in a narrow gorge or forest thicket, using the surprise effect. Retreat and pursuit maneuvers were also important, especially in conflicts over territory or resources. Collective strength was key. Unlike solo big-game hunting, the battle required synchronicity and interaction. This means that even in those days, there was some form of command and coordination. Probably the most experienced and powerful members of the tribe, who had proven their skills in hunting or previous skirmishes, took on the role of leaders. Their ability to make quick decisions and coordinate group actions was vital to survival. Primitive weapons such as spears, clubs, and stones required close contact, making personal combat skills and physical fitness crucial. Warriors probably developed their own fighting styles based on their body strengths and available weapons. For example, the larger and stronger ones could specialize in close combat with clubs, while the more agile ones could use throwing spears to deal damage from a distance. Anthropologists studying modern hunter-gatherer tribes note that they often use hit-and-run tactics, avoiding prolonged open clashes that could lead to large losses. The main goal was not to destroy the enemy, but to intimidate him or expel him from a certain territory. However, if the conflict escalated into a full-scale battle, the losses could be significant. Could they use camouflage to blend in with nature, or battle cries to intimidate the enemy? Definitely. Using natural materials for camouflage, such as mud, leaves, or animal skins, may well have been a common practice. Battle cries, in addition to being intimidating, also served as a means of communication, helping to synchronize attacks and maintain morale. Moreover, these calls may have had a ritual meaning, invoking patron spirits or expressing tribal identity. The development of these primitive tactics and strategies was inextricably linked to the evolution of humans themselves. As our ancestors' cognitive abilities improved, they were able to analyze the results of past conflicts, learn from defeats and victories, and pass this knowledge on to future generations. Thus, even without formal training, experience was accumulated and improved. Survival instincts gave rise to the first elements of military science, laying the foundation for all subsequent strategic and tactical developments. Hollywood movies usually show young, strong men going into battle. But who actually participated in the prehistoric conflicts? Research shows that age and gender were not always the determining factors. Men tended to be the main participants in direct confrontations, using their physical strength and hunting skills. However, archaeological finds, such as skeletons of women and children with signs of violent death, as in Nataryuk, indicate that women and children may also have become victims or even participated in the defense of their settlement. These weren't jousting matches, but fierce clashes for survival. Elders could play the role of strategists or leaders, passing on their experience and knowledge to young warriors. Young men were trained in combat skills from childhood, mastering the use of a spear, bow, and throwing stones. In hunter-gatherer groups, each member was important, and participation in conflicts was a matter of collective security. Why is it that even today, in some traditional societies, children are taught martial arts from a very young age? The answer lies in the depths of time. Modern wars are often fought over resources, territories, and ideologies. And what could prehistoric people who had neither states nor money fight for? Their motives were much more primitive, but no less significant. Access to resources, fresh water, fertile hunting grounds, flint or obsidian mining sites for making tools was one of the main causes of conflict. With limited resources, fighting for them could be a matter of life and death for the entire group. Territorial disputes could also arise, especially when one group invaded another's land. The abduction of women or children from a hostile tribe could be another motive. In a low-population environment, increasing the group through spoils could be important for survival and reproduction. Finally, revenge for previous raids or assassinations could also lead to new confrontations, creating a vicious cycle of violence. Why did primitive people need slaves? And how did this change their society? Find out what was behind the first wars of conquest. What happened after the prehistoric battle? It all depended on the outcome. Winners could capture valuable resources, territory, and sometimes the women or children of the losing side. Prisoners could be assimilated into their own group or, in more violent cases, killed. Archaeological evidence suggests cannibalism in some Paleolithic cultures, although its causes remain a matter of debate. Was it ritual or was it the result of extreme need for food? The losers faced dire consequences. They could be driven out of the territory, deprived of access to vital resources, which often led to starvation and death. Those who survived had to search for new lands and rebuild their group size. Losses in battle were irreplaceable for small communities, and each life was of great value. DNA studies conducted on the remains of ancient humans show genetic diversity, which may indicate mixing of groups after conflicts, but also their isolation. Why was defeat in a prehistoric battle scarier than death? Keep watching to find out about the scariest consequences. The question of the role of violence in human evolution is one of the most controversial. Was it a driving force for progress, forcing people to develop cooperation and technology? Or was it a hindrance that led to death and suffering? On the one hand, the constant threat of conflict could contribute to the development of collective organization, the improvement of tools, which could be used as weapons, and the strengthening of social ties within the group. Those groups that were more cohesive and effective in combat had a better chance of survival and reproduction. On the other hand, violence led to the loss of human lives, which in a low population was a serious blow to the gene pool. Anthropologist Steven Pinker, in his book, The Best Angels of Our Nature, argues that violence was much more common in prehistoric times than in modern society, and only the development of statehood and law has significantly reduced the death rate from violent causes. How is it possible that our ancestors, who lived in harmony with nature, were more violent than we are? The answer will show that progress does not always lead to peace. Imagine that you live in a world where any neighboring tribe can attack you at any time. What would you do? Prehistoric people, to protect themselves, began to build the first fortifications. Of course, these weren't fortresses made of stone, but even simple barriers could save lives. For example, in some places, archaeologists have found the remains of palisades made of sharpened stakes surrounding temporary parking lots. These primitive walls could slow down the enemy's advance, give time to organize a defense or retreat. Natural shelters, such as caves, could be reinforced with barricades of rocks or branches. In Africa, at some sites of the early Paleolithic, primitive stone walls were found that could serve as defensive structures. Although these fortifications were far from perfect, they show the emergence of strategic thinking and an understanding of the need for protection. This was the first architecture created not for housing, but for survival and conflict. Why do people still live in fortified villages in some parts of the world today, as they did tens of thousands of years ago? This proves that some history lessons are never forgotten. What did prehistoric man feel when he went into battle? Fear, adrenaline, and self-preservation were all part of their experience. Unlike modern soldiers, they had neither psychological training nor medicine to ease their suffering. The fear of death and injury was real, but the survival instinct and protection of their group probably outweighed it. The pain from wounds received in battle was terrible, and the chances of survival after a serious injury were minimal due to the lack of antibiotics and basic medical knowledge. Death from infection was common. However, archaeological findings sometimes show that injured people received some form of care. For example, skeletons with healed fractures found in various places indicate that tribesmen could have cared for the wounded, at least until they recovered. This shows solidarity and empathy within the group, even in a harsh world. But what if I say that the psychological traumas of prehistoric battles still haunt us? The answer will shock you. Prehistoric battles, however rare or frequent, have left their mark not only on the archaeological layers, but also on our genetics and culture. Genetic studies show that conflicts may have resulted in bottlenecks. In populations, when the size of the group was sharply reduced, affecting genetic diversity. On the other hand, the abduction of women or the mixing of groups after conflicts could lead to genetic exchange, contributing to the spread of genes. For example, in Europe and Asia, traces of mixing of genetic lines have been found, which could be the result of both peaceful migration and violent clashes. Culturally, conflicts may have contributed to the development of hierarchies within groups, the emergence of leaders, or leaders capable of leading. They could also be the basis for the first myths and legends about heroes and enemies, passed down from generation to generation. Perhaps it was from these first encounters that the ideas of insiders and outsiders were born, which still affect human societies. How different are we from our ancestors? And why do modern conflicts still use the same basic logic? The answer to this question can change your perception of progress. Survival instincts. Under stress and threat, modern humans, like their prehistoric ancestor, may exhibit primitive fight-or-flight instincts. Our reactions to danger are still deeply rooted in our evolutionary past. Technology dependency. While prehistoric humans were completely dependent on their primitive stone tools for survival, modern humans are completely dependent on sophisticated technology. Deprive us of electricity, the internet, or supermarkets, and we will find ourselves in a situation that is not much different from the Paleolithic. Territoriality and resources. Even in the modern world, conflicts often arise due to the struggle for resources, oil, water, and territory, which is a direct parallel to the motives of prehistoric wars. Group cohesion. Under threat, modern humans, like our ancestors, tend to form groups and form a sense of us versus them, which was critical for survival in the Stone Age. We've covered just a few of the shocking aspects of prehistoric battles that are very different from what we see on screen. The reality was much harsher, but also more true. Our ancestors, who lived tens of thousands of years ago, faced not only wild animals in the elements, but also violence from their own kind. Their conflicts were primitive but deadly and left a deep mark on our history, genetics, and psychology. Understanding these ancient conflicts helps us better understand the roots of human aggression and perhaps reflect on how far we have come in building a peaceful society. To learn even more amazing and shocking facts about our ancestors and other mysteries of history, be sure to subscribe to our channel and do not miss the new videos.